One thing I wanted to ask about was, I'll frame it very interestingly, because obviously you've made a lot of content about your time when you were at E-League and afterwards and things that went on. But one thing I wanted to ask was this. One of the reasons I actually wanted to be involved with Flashpoint specifically was because when I'd worked, not just on other TOs, specifically on E-League, and you're thinking, fuck, I'm here. Like, I'm in a real TV studio. I'm literally where they make fucking Inside the NBA. Like, surely now's when, if I give these guys the good ideas and I give them the extra things we can do and the side stuff, it could happen. It's not just a dream anymore. One of the things I found underwhelming, and I know it was something like, even though you got to have input on some things, was an issue for you, as you've alluded to before, you still want to do the documentaries the right way, is that E-League was different because it was a real TV show. They had very strict constraints. And also, if people don't know, it's part of the reason CSGO isn't really on it anymore. It was a loss leader. It wasn't something that they really gave a fuck. It's never going to be successful in the traditional metrics and make money. Therefore, I get why they didn't buy into the vision. So I thought at Flashpoint, right, if I really do get to be the creative director, I get to like actually say how the talent things and how the desk's set up and what additional side things. Now, as I pointed out in my video, for understandable reasons, some of that stuff got handicapped and you never actually even got to see it. So unfortunate. But even just the premise of being able to do it was exciting to me. What would you say on that angle? Because I know that while on the one hand you are definitely proud of the work you did at E-League and you were there for quite a considerable tenure doing all these multiple different games. Sure, it ended acrimoniously in terms of like the fact that you sort of left because the people were such cunts to you in terms of random fans from the fighting game community, not necessarily E-League. What were the challenges or the disappointments of E-League though? Like where did it, like was there a world where we could have ascended through E-League and done other things through there?
I think we were just a little bit too soon. I think if E-League had started in 2018 with everything that was going on in the industry rather than 2016, I think it probably, but the metrics by which they were judging success, I think it succeeds to a much greater degree. It's Windows, for timing of creating things, very difficult to judge when you're dealing with unstable markets, geopolitical factors, economic factors. Our industry's all over the fucking place at the best of times, where you've got very credible voices saying it's a bubble that's going to pop any time and we're all going to be bankrupt, and you've got other people saying it's going straight to the fucking moon, like GameStop stock or whatever. So and both of these people are as kind of equally informed, so who the fuck knows really what's going on? We've got different opinions, I think, a little bit about where it's at, but ultimately I definitely think at the time E-League jumped in, it was just a little bit too ahead of its time. Not by much, but a little bit too much. Because the first thing it really achieved, and the thing everyone has to be, recognize this, is the level of production forced everyone else to raise their game. Everyone. Think about if you go and look at what the average esports broadcast looked like in 2015, and then you compare it to what we were doing in E-League, and subsequently what ESL did and what everyone else tried to do. E-League did that, right? No doubt. The days of, not having super cool graphics and stingers and nice stages, all of that was gone, So then the other thing it did was looking after players and making players feel like rock stars, making esports players feel actually legitimized. Because let's also be real, even in 2015, people were still trying to nickel and dime you, make you share a hotel room with a teammate, right?
Yes.
You certainly didn't have a goodie bag and a limo driving you to and from the events. We did all that. A tournament organizer actually called us up and said you're treating the players disproportionately well, and it's causing issues.
Oh, I've got a great one for you.
Yeah,
just in the context of what's going on at the moment, I've never said this publicly. It's not the end of the world. It's not something that was like super in confidence, because I won't reveal who said it. I actually got told by, of all people, a CIS tournament organizer that they actually hoped that tournaments like E-League not only failed but would never exist anymore, so that the rates in the industry and how you treated the talent and how the players were expecting it. They genuinely said it, Rich. They weren't like, they didn't even, they almost said it like not knowing they sound like the villain when they said that. Like,
no, but like, so there was a lot of that. There was a lot of that attitude, and it wasn't just limited to the CIS region. I can tell you that firsthand. There were a lot of people who were industry people who supposedly claim they want the best for the industry and want it to grow, who were saying what we were doing was like unsustainable. Of course, they were all able to get up to our level when we said we're not budging on it. You know, we're not going to lower our standards to make yours look comparatively better. Why the fuck would we do that? So, you know, equally though, we definitely contributed to this culture of greed and diva-ish nonsense that we're seeing from players now. That we were a big part of that. Maybe that's a downside. I don't know. Maybe that's on the players. But, you know, yeah, there were disappointments. I mean, I remember sitting down and scripting a bunch of documentaries out, like just basically like what you would do a treatment of a book or a movie, you know, all the key scenes, all, you know, a synopsis. And I did that for like 5 or 6, and I wanted these to be ESPN 30 for 30 history of CSGO kind of pieces, picking up interesting stories that would transcend the niche aspect of what we do and just be a good human interest story. Like for me, the best 30 for 30 sports documentaries are the ones that are in really weird niche scenes or are in a country you might not know too much about or a sport you don't follow, but the story transcends it. Like there's one about in the latest series. It's one about fucking eating contests and a rivalry that too. You know, how's that compelling? You know, but it is. So you can take something as wild and, you know, hard to understand to an outsider as esports, but still tell really interesting stories, because we got dozens of insane stories in our field and ones that haven't been told. And that's what I wanted to do ultimately. I wanted ELEAGUE to be, yes, a tournament. Yes, we would host the majors. Yes, we would be a regular weekly TV show where enthusiasts could tune in, watch multiple games. But also, I wanted us to graduate to the real shit. You know, that had to be the goal. But unfortunately, because it was a loss leader, you know, I had talks with executives where I was expressing my frustrations, and they basically said, you know, we've got to find a way to make this, you know, we're at the stage now where we've got to find a way to start making this more profitable and how we package it. We got to work smarter. It can't be what it was in the past. And, you know, we need to work smarter on it as a product. And that wasn't a factor in why I left. I would have been, I would have been there till the end, you know, I would have been there until it got cancelled. It's still going in some form over there.
Sure.
And, you know, it would have been me hosting The Sims 4 tournaments or whatever. They literally just did a series on that. And I would have done it because I loved working with those people. I loved working with all of the guys over there. And if we could have kept that crew together, I'd have stayed. But there was just stuff going on in my life at the time. And the stress, you know, I can't tell you, I can't explain what it's like to have people literally saying they want to kill you for opinions you don't hold, but because they've been told by somebody else that they respect, you do hold those opinions. And you've got people, you know, messaging my direct bosses, you know, how can somebody of Jewish heritage have a Nazi on a broadcast? That was one, you know. And you know, you get dozens of these emails all the time. Pressure from the studios that made the games. We think he's too divisive. We want to pull him off air. You know, yeah, and you know, we had to stop doing the fan meetups, security detail, and then that bled over into other games. Like the one event I should be able to go to. I mean, probably not true anymore. But the one esport event I should be able to go to and feel relatively safe is a CS event. Like surely there's enough people that can have some level of respect for what I did. Well, no, as you saw, it bled over into the Boston Major. You know, one of the high points of my career, one of the high points of my life, pulling off that.
Just to clarify, by the way, because again, this is where someone who has 10 followers and doesn't know what they're talking about but decides to wade in thinks that you're just talking now about an account that had like a Donald Duck avatar that said, I kill you, bitch. Like, give them a sense of like, what are you talking about here in terms of people say things? People
would send death threats on Twitter and, you know, I would get like so many of them. It got to a stage where it was actually now mandated I had to pass them on because there's a liability issue. You know, like obviously if somebody comes to attack me and I get hurt and other people get hurt because of that and I didn't pass on that information, you know, I've been negligent. So the security at Turner, which was great. You know, they deal with all the celebrity security, and think about how many basket cases gravitate towards, you know, basketball players and stuff. So they were like, you know, you've got to start letting us know about these things. And every time I did, they would use their connections to basically run checks on these people. And I think like 3 of the threats in the time I was there came back as being deemed credible, believable threats of violence. That, you know, there was reason to believe that with these people's history, criminal record, you know. And when we got to Boston, you know, there was somebody had said, I am going to drive to the Boston Major and shoot Richard Lewis in the head on air. That was that. You know, I don't know if you remember, but we had to do all of the fucking, you know, drills. We did shooting drill, bomb scare drill, you know. And I'm looking around watching the rest of the crew having to go through this. We had to do a day on security protocol. And that's just because I'm at the show.
Right, yeah.
And it's not a good feeling. It's not a good feeling when I'm, you know, stood next to Smix, who's never done anything to anyone.
Yes.
And we're having to do, and if a shooter comes in and this happens, and that's on me. That she's now stressed, thinking there could be a plausible danger or whatever, you know. So it was really hard. It was hard not to do fan interactions, as all the fans who were there can attest to. You know, I was literally shadowed by...
By the way, that sounds like something else that I don't think you've ever overtly said, but that's another issue that... This is the weird thing. Obviously, we are human. We have our pressure points. It's just, it wouldn't actually, it's funny, it wouldn't be what our enemies would expect because they're so reductive. They think we're just like heartless pieces of shit.
Of course, yeah.
So the funny thing is, they don't know the classic pressure point's obvious. It's the people around us who are more vulnerable. Yeah. Because I'll tell you what, when you said that about Smix, the first thing I always think, it's one of the things I always think when I see Smix, unfortunately, is you know what? Obviously, that joke I did was off colour. Shouldn't have done it. It was a fucked up one. I apologised for it the day after about the Luminosity players back at MLG Columbus. What I actually really felt really bad about beyond that, though, because listen, once you said your apology, that's it. It's the end of the world. You know, you move on. It's the fact that I basically drew her into it, and in some way, because I made her part of the joke, and she hadn't said that, now idiots could imply she had said. So I know
and
that's one.
Do, you know,
yeah, but so I know that's one thing about ELEAGUE that listen, you can handle them being arseholes, whatever, even to some degree, sending you death threats, but I'm sure eventually it even just gets like almost embarrassing that your own boss, even if your boss is like, listen, I know they're all nonsense emails they're sending. Eventually you just feel like I'm just a burden if I keep doing this. You know, was there some of that?
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, you know, it's fucking. I'm not worried so much about like, you know, the almost like social embarrassment aspects. Let's just say if one day somebody does do something like that, and then I'm stood in the wrong place at the wrong time, and someone else gets hurt. You know, that's the thing.
Sure.
That's the thing that would prey on my mind. That this is, you know, how we're living because some guy is upset about something I've said about a video game. You know, once those liars and the bullshit artists brought politics to the table and started saying, oh, he's a Nazi, you know, he's right wing, he's a fascist, you know, don't hold any sort of conceivable view that would get me invited to CPAC, right? You know, don't have any views like that, and don't, you know, put whatever. You know, once that lie gets introduced, people are willing to kill you for politics.
Yes,
you know,
different game.
Yeah, and that's what I was being held up as. I was being held up as an extreme right-wing figure who had infiltrated video games and was using it as a radicalization pipeline. You know, that was the lie. And so, yeah, someone will come and shoot you in the head for that, evidently. And, you know, that was what I had to think about. And then you got people who just want to talk about video games, as I do most of the time. And that was the worry. You know, because you would have been mortified, you know, if someone got hurt because someone was trying to get to you, like that,
sure,
that, you know, the guilt that's going to get on top of you. But yeah, I mean, you know, obviously that was the mad stress. That was why I couldn't re-sign for ELEAGUE. I literally couldn't do that anymore. I just couldn't.